my screen look like?
You should be able to see a big white banner saying Accounting, AccLink, and then Heritage IT.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's kick this off. I'll stop the recording and start again. Well, good morning and good evening all. To talk through the simple processes for the Retail Pro to Sage 300 Accounting Link program, built to work to make each program aware of each other and to share the transactions in a comprehensive manner so that the Sage ERP system can be what we call an operations integration, meaning that all of the transactions that would happen in the retail sector are replicated in the ERP system, allowing the ERP system to become the primary procurement and heavy-duty inventory costing management system for a back end to sit behind a Retail Pro operation. So without any further ado, I'll move in and start demonstrating from the systems themselves. So here we have the Sage ERP system, Sage 300, and we have here in front of us a focus today on the accounting for the accounts receivable side of things, not so much with the inventory, but inventory's down here, and you will notice if we go down, we have the Retail Pro operations integration set up within the SDK of the Sage 300 suite. So in accounts receivable for customers, we have to achieve the objectives for this scenario for our requirements of having the concept of a national account. Now, a national account means a group of accounts who all can be conglomerated into one amount, where you may have individual customers that may trade as part of that group, and each customer can be treated with individually, or the group can be dealt with in its entirety. So in our case, if I open the national accounts screen, and we have set up here a company called Whistle Workwear. So Whistle Workwear is our national account. So this is an organization that may deal with any number of our stores, and in this case may have multiple employees who could come along and be granted credit to buy some items in the store, which are then paid for by the company after the statements are raised by us as the Sage customers. So the idea here is, just to show quickly, if we look at the processing side of things, this is set up in this case here where the group has a total credit limit of $7,500. We have not done anything overly special in here for validations and things else where things might come in, but basically there is a full suite of control for credit, and this allows us therefore to see detail of what happens underneath this group. But this is, like, if you like, the wrapper for the entity. Statistics are accumulated and the most recent activities are also gathered here. The way the Sage system presents the statistics is by a fiscal period, and you would choose the fiscal period you wish to do. There's also, of course, significant reporting that goes around the end of that as well. So when we look at our customers, and I'll just start with the Whistle Workwear customer. So if I start with WW and press the search button, it will show me the customers that start with WW. There are full search facilities here to search by customer name, phone numbers, anything else you would want, but I know they start with WW. So at this point in time, we have set up the Whistle Workwear national account, and we have 2 employees, and we have what we would call the corporate account. So it's something where the normal trading organization is able to deal with us directly, and we can do transactions on each of these. So I will open this one, which is Abraham, and we'll see here that he's aligned at this point in time as a national account. So if I were to set up a new one, I can simply click the new button, and we know that WW001 and 2 are in use, so I'm going to call this one WW003, and I will just make this whoever we wish to make it, but we'll pretend to be me for the moment. Now, in this data set, we've got a few different national accounts set up, so I'm just going to choose Whistle Workwear. At this point in time, because this customer that I'm creating is aligned in reality to a group, in our case, I'm choosing the retail group, many defaults are set across this system. Now those defaults will flow based upon what's been set in that group. So I'll just quickly show you back here into the groups. So if I choose the RTL group, these are the defaults that have been set up. And these are things that influence the general ledger, they influence terms of trade, how often we would be sending them a statement, and how often, if it's applicable, that we might be charging them interest on failures to, or interest on overdue accounts and so on. I mentioned earlier that we have the ability to do credit checks, and this is set up here as a global offering though, and then from an invoicing perspective, if we have a salesperson and tax configuration that would be applicable, then you would set these things up in here. So we would add US tax or whatever. But if you don't set it up here, then you need to set it up potentially in the customer itself. There is also, and this is an optional to the solution, it's an extra module in the solution, optional fields. Now, optional fields allows us to put other bits and pieces of peripheral data that you may or may not need. Statistics tells us basically what's going across the entire retail group historically as well. So there's quite a bit of information that feeds for us automatically in our customer creation. So back here now, we're in the process of creating this guy, there's nothing in here that's necessarily going to be mandated to be done. Anything that realistically is going to be mandated will be either logically pre-filled or not. But you can set up contact information, and you can have many, many, many contacts if you wish now against an individual customer, which can be dealt with and sent information and managed as well. The processing, as you see here, this is all fed directly from what we had set up in the group account. And it's going through to our trade accounts receivable account if we had credit information or particular trading information. Now, in our case, we want to ensure that we're managing the total processes, I suppose, of what we're wanting to handle. And in the invoicing tab, I can set a particular pricing scenario and everything else. This is both applicable within the Sage solution, where you could do sales through the normal sales order entry module, or through the general Retail Pro scenario. And these can and or will integrate as required. Obviously, we have the ability to deal with inventory locations where we have multiple stores or even a warehouse. And by setting a default here, you would find that you get every time you deal with this customer is expected to deal at this location. You could override that on the actual transactions, but it just gives you that pre-fill. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there was no tax group selected. And if you want to have a tax group, then you probably should have a tax group done. Otherwise, it won't know what to do with tax, and you would have to choose it at the time of the transaction. To some degree, if the transactions are only flowing from Retail Pro, though, that's irrelevant, because we realistically inject the tax into Sage from Retail Pro using the tax management and the tax solutions that are built into the module. So within Sage, we have complete tax management, and that feeds into our tax audit reports and everything else for compliance requirements. So back on our customer again. Yep.
I'm sorry, I have one question regarding taxes. We have a mobile truck also that goes to several different locations.
Yep.
Would we be able to adjust the taxes for the truck, like say if it goes to Myrtle Beach, what the Myrtle Beach taxes would be, or something like that?
Yeah, the short answer and the simple answer is absolutely. The constraint for you there would be the person in the mobile truck. You could have a couple of options on how to handle that. But if they're using Retail Pro Prism for their point of sale, all you need to do is make sure you choose the correct tax treatment on the transaction in Retail Pro, and it will get the right management as it falls into here. There's also other ways you could handle that within Retail Pro, but bluntly, the process for that is managed by Retail Pro, and I'm sure that the guys at Big Hairy Dog can take you through what those requirements would be. I'm not sufficiently familiar with how you would be configured today to do this, but there are many options as well for tax management and tax final reporting available in the States. And those will work just as well in the global scheme of things. If you have like, and I don't off the top of my head remember the name, but there is a reporting entity that's used to manage tax for many customers in the States. I think it might be Avalara or something like that. But if you're working with that, that'll work in the same way. What happens in Retail Pro effectively will be put into Sage. And I'll say that because it's not really even an option. We found that if we didn't manage the way the tax went into Sage from Retail Pro, it is possible to have Sage actually manage and do the tax for us in its own mechanic. Now, the problem with that, we often end up with rounding errors. And the fundamental reason for that is technical in the databases between the two systems. But bluntly, by us managing it, by saying what was in Retail Pro is what goes into Sage, it means the two systems align perfectly and we don't end up with those other rounding issues. It may mean, though, on occasion, there will be a rounding adjustment entry on a transaction created in Sage for, say, a cent, where you may have had, for example, a scenario where an item is sold for, I'll give an example, which is an Australian one, unfortunately, but if I sell something for 5 cents, it would be a half a cent GST, which means on the Retail Pro line, it would be 6 cents. If you sell the second line for 5 cents and there's a half a cent GST, it would also be 6 cents, but the total invoice would be 5.5 plus 5.5, giving a total of 11 cents. And whilst it sounds silly, the Retail Pro invoice would be 11 cents. Unfortunately, when we come into Sage, we can't have a 5.5 cents because we're rounding to 2 decimals, and therefore it would come in as 6 cents and 6 cents. So we actually have to do a 6 cent and a 6 cent and then a minus 1 cent to give you an 11 cent transaction, just to be a pain. It's just one part of the rounding mechanics of the various programs. Okay, so to move on then, yes, so tax is easy, and that's realistically all we do. All I need now to do is click add, and that customer would now exist, and any other configurations that might be required. But I'll flick back to the other two here that we've got, which is, actually we go back to the corporate account. No, corporate account will be last, actually. So Abraham is in here, and we've got him set up, and his scenario is based around the idea of his accounts being configured with all of the various management of it. And if I go to customer inquiries, and we go to WW001, here's the looking of his system. Now we've actually cleaned up the system and effectively made everything be nice and easy as 0 when we start, so you won't see any, well, you'll see new stuff appear. Looking at the credit status tab now, as you can see, and here you'll see that we have effectively no balance, there's nothing outstanding, nothing else, but this guy has a credit limit of $200 and a credit available of $200. You'll see that when we go into Retail Pro. You can see here that there have been a couple of transactions been done in the past for this guy. He's had 2 invoices been done. He averages 13 days to pay. He does a total days of 13. You divide that by that, you get 6.5 as the average days to pay. And given that he's on an aging scenario of 30 days, that's pretty good. No outstanding retainage, and in the national account, because this customer here, Abraham, is part of the national account, we also see the national account credit statistics here, or stats. So there is no balance on the whole national account, and there is a total of 7,500 available on the national account. I could go and show you the transactions, but we'll see new transactions when they come in. In fact, that's probably the easiest way and best way to go about it. Same thing, exactly the same for Maya. So Maya's been set up in the same thing, effectively exactly the same. Then you'll see myself, and then we'll go on to the corporate account. So the corporate account's the same. Now they've been set up with a $7,100 balance, which allows the national account to total up to $7,500. And that gives us the configuration, if you like, of Sage in advance of what we're doing here. So we'll go to Retail Pro now, and for that I'll go to my local computer. This is actually running on a virtual server sitting on one of our Microsoft hypervisors. And now on my local computer, if I can find it, here we go. Here is our Prism system running, and this is talking to a subsidiary which is is based as a US subsidiary, and the transactions that we do in here will flow across into Sage through the configuration. I won't take you into the full details of the configuration options, but it is relatively straightforward, and that's where the synchronization of the magic happens. That's all set to happen in the background automatically for me. So it's good news is when you get it done, it should be right for us. So when we start a transaction here, we have we won't turn it into a Sage solution. So we're going to do a new transaction on customer ID. Pardon me. Sorry about the flashing screens. We've loaded Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln's come in and showing us that he has a charge limit of $200 and he has a charge balance of 0. So he has the ability to spend $200 on what we call in Retail Pro the charge tender. That charge tender, of course, is what will force the flow through into Sage into the debtor account. So if I do a new item in here and I do an item lookup, let's go and look at what we have from a boot scenario, and let's try to choose an 8-inch work boot here. So in this case here, we're 195.51. That's not going to cause any hassles. So we'll just tender this transaction off, and we'll just put this on charge. So at this point in time, I can take charge. The tender now shows as the payment being receipted, goes through the system. Now I could print, update, and send receipts and everything else in Retail Pro, but now I can just update that transaction. And you see that's gone through completely painlessly for the cashier. Now I am logged in here as a cashier, not as a system administrator, so this should cause hassles if I were to try to deal with a customer where there is where I want to work on more than what is available credit. So we'll just load Maya. And Maya's come in the same situation, $200, and let's just find some different boots, and we'll possibly sell a couple of boots in this case. Okay, so in this case, we're trying to make a sale. We've got $200 charge limit available. We've got no charge balance, so that means there is $200 available to be spent, but we're trying to spend $467. So if I tender this transaction and I choose charge, and I choose take, the system will tell me, and by the way, just as a matter of business, I'm demonstrating here on version 1.14, which is, I believe, the version that Big Hairy Dog will be talking about with you from a Prism perspective. So this is the way it'll work in this version. So it'll say permissions, the customer is over their charge limit. So you can't do that. I, as the user, don't have the rights to do that. The system is smart enough, though, to say to me, well, he's got 200 available, so it now defaults my amount back to $200. So I can take that on charge. Now, at this point in time, to complete the transaction, there's a further $267.07 outstanding. So the customer now, of course, has to tender that off, and you would just handle that in your normal mechanic with an integrated credit card or however it's going to work or what's available to them. In my case, I'm just going to make life easy and choose cash, and I'll take that. So at this point in time, we've got a balance where there is the take amount and the document total are in alignment, so I can update that one as well. So that transaction now posts into the retail system, and I could go and look at those customers and see what's going on. Now, there's other features there that can be done where if there's an example of a plugin we've done for a customer where when there's a significant number of transactions done, you may find that the tender balance against, or the charge tender against the customer balance isn't assessed until the time when you go to tender on charge. Now, because you may have 20 or 30 items on a sale, you don't want to redo the sale. So we also have an option there where you choose a customer. If that customer has an on hold and you are in a situation where you deal a lot with credit customers, it's often good to have that. As soon as you choose a customer, it will pop up a message on the screen saying this customer's on hold, so you can't use charge tender, right? So that way you're telling the customer before you start rocketing all of the transaction through. So if we also choose the HQ account, which I think is this one. This one's not showing a balance, but that's just a flaw in the system, I believe. I don't know why it's not showing a balance, but it should be showing us a balance there, which would work as well. But the idea of this one here was to be able to show you a transaction just where there's not going to be a drama. So let's just choose a boot, and let's just make it that we're going to buy a quantity of 5, say, And in this scenario now, so up to $1,000. And with a bit of luck, this won't give me any grief when I choose to charge, was the idea anyway. So take that. And I don't have a problem, so I am going over a credit limit that's available. So sorry about that. That's the one thing we probably missed in the setup there, was to handle the corporate account. But we could potentially take, I think we did a credit card with the idea of showing you the idea to handle a or was it a charge type? I can't remember. I thought we had something here for like a government card of some type. It's a government tender or something. I think
you did last time.
Yeah, I think we may have lost that in the
had
translation. The system's been used for several demos, so Simon maybe has just missed that in the setting up for it, the same as we have with the credit limit. But the idea being that will go through, and in this case here, I can't do it out. So to get the transaction through, so we'll see the transaction at least appear in the account. We'll just assume it was taken in cash, okay? So at least you'll see the transaction flow through, but yeah, you have to manage your credit correctly, of course, to get that right. So at this point in time, the mechanic behind all of what you can do within Retail Pro Prism, remember, is exactly as you would have expected it to be. So you can go into all of the functions, you can go into all of the facilities that are available to you based upon what you have. We've added a couple of other modules that help people find items at the point of sale, which is our extensive search scenario and other things. I mentioned those last time, and to be honest, I didn't actually mean to show you them here. They're legacy systems that we've just made a little bit easier for the customers to find them. When we look up an item, for example, if I choose boots, it will give me the list of the items that are of that. We've also enhanced this now, so this would actually show you the size and the attributes. So you would see that it's a size 7 black or something along those lines as well in this drop-down list, and how many in this list appear are available. That's just a feature of what we've done, and because I haven't actually done anything, just choose one there. I need to acknowledge that out. But that's the Retail Pro Prism side, and BHD can take you through all of the details that you might ever want on that, I'm sure, to show you what's possible. So back into our Sage world.
David?
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry.
This is Susan. A question regarding when you're searching for boots. We will have the capability of just reading a barcode for that information, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, just wanted to verify. Thank you.
Yes. In fact, that's normally just scanning a barcode in is the ideal and simplest way to do it, of course. I just didn't have in front of me here a barcode that aligned to one of the items. Actually, I probably do. Let me just go back here just for a moment just to show that for you. So in Retail Pro, if I were to do, and my barcode scans in 1533, there's the item. Okay. So it's as simple as that. So this is just a data entry screen. We've just sort of hijacked it for that smart finder option, so that we know that if we're dealing with a Carhartt, that's not good spelling, C-A-R-H. The reason I'm doing 4 characters is we've set the trigger on this. If I give 4 characters, it will find it. So you get the Carhartt one to try to keep it simple, but you can also potentially do work, and it will bring up the work boots and so on. But that's just to help you when you don't have the barcode, you see. But if you have a 1533 to scan in, it'll scan straight in like that. Okay.
Perfect.
See, in this case, it just adds to it there, so I can scan another one, and we're up to 4 now. Okay. So I'll leave this transaction in abeyance. So this transaction obviously won't pass through to our Sage system because it's not actually a valid transaction until it's actually tendered or completed. So in our world over here in Sage, what's happening in the background, just to flow you in, is the Retail Pro Prism operations program is running a transactions read. So it's reading in our sales, but it also handles the other, there are 4 primary integration points between the 2 systems. And we're going on beyond where we went last time, but just to flesh this out, there are sales, there are purchases. Well, basically we buy goods and receipt the goods, okay, and we sell them. These are the 2 primary ones, and these are the 2 transactions that come in. So this will receive the goods into inventory, and this allows us to sell them out of inventory and take cash or charge tenders against those transactions. The other ones that happen that affect our accounting processes are adjustments. So this is inventory adjustments, stock takes or write-offs or whatever you have, and transfers between stores. And these will also come across into the system. But what we've done is we've set up a scheduled task in the background, which is handling the integration, and it will read those transactions across and pull them into Sage for me. So they're coming into here, and they will feed into the Sage system. And something that I did cover off last week is the way the Sage system can work. It can run as a batch or effectively and ostensibly an online system. So effectively the transactions can just flow right through to the general ledger. Typically, that's probably not how you'd use the system. That's certainly the way I have it configured at the moment, though. But the normal mechanic for this might be you would allow this to happen overnight, do the processing and everything else, and the transactions will flow into Sage to be available for you in the morning when you arrive for work. So you effectively arrive in the morning and you're looking at your system is updated as at the close of business last night. Assuming all of the internet connectivity in the Prism world and the Sage world is fine, but realistically the Sage and the Prism server will be sitting pretty close together. There shouldn't be any connectivity between the two of those. So as long as the store information gets to the main in Retail Pro, it will be in Sage. So to get back into our accounts receivable and our customers, so in our customers, let's just go back in and have a look at what might have happened here. So our customer inquiries here, let me just refresh this. I'll just move on to the next customer, and we'll see now what can be happening, and we can see what other functions might have occurred. So let me just go back here. So nothing for David, but you can see here now that Maya, she had that concept of the $200. She bought more than what she had available, so she has no credit available, and her credit limit though is still at $200. And we'll come back and discuss that temporarily in a moment. And here we have this one, and there was that $195.51, so there's $4.49 now available for Abraham. And if we go back through to the corporate account, it's going to show that the credit available here for the corporate account, the national account. The national account shows that there is $395.51 due. Now this is for those transactions that were paid by that were paid on charge tender. Now I'll just flick through to the corporate account, and you'll see here, if I go to documents, and if I include fully paid transactions, we should see this one here, which is the 11th of the 11th, which is today here. This is the transaction that we did, and that's that $977.55, which has come through in sales. And I can drill down into the detail of that if I wish, by just double clicking on the transaction. I mean, you're seeing the detail here, but you can actually drill right down into the transaction in Sage, and you can see, okay, this is an invoice. It was a summary invoice issued. It's for Whistle Workwear on the corporate account and everything else. The transactions are there, and in reality, the all of the details that goes underneath that are there. So I can actually go down. I could reprint an invoice here from within the. It won't be pretty, but I'll actually do this. So you could reprint the invoice, include invoices that's already been printed in this case, which may or may not be required depending upon how you've set your system. But this will be just the default invoice. And Reinhardt's saying, David, why are you doing this? I haven't tested that, but it'll work, trust me. While that's running, I'm preparing though. This is telling me that this is, whoops, ran away. So there's the invoice. So it was 5 Carhartts 8-inch work boots for that amount of money. The amount due, discount amount and everything else, that's the total invoice. Now in reality, that was a paid invoice, but if you were just generating it as an invoice with showing a current balance, you would have a different scenario to report that. But that's a reproduced invoice within Sage for the sale that was actually done in Retail Pro. So it means your accounts receivable staff don't have to go across into the point of sale system to resource invoices and transactions that have occurred. They can simply generate them here in any way that they wish.
And David?
Yes?
Can we customize that invoice that it may include the Whistle Workwear employee name or?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, if I did the other one, you would see Abraham Lincoln here, for example, or Maya. the idea being the invoices here is done. It tells me that this was done on the 11th day of the 11th month of the year 2021. It is, I believe, store number 2, which is Oklahoma City, maybe, and it's on subsidiary 8, I think, or it might be store 8 and subsidiary 2, one or the other. But it's done in a way to make this a unique number. Actually, yeah, I think it's transaction number 8, and it is subsidiary 2. It's actually receipt number 8 in Retail Pro, probably. Reinhardt's chatting with me down here. You'll see here saying it's subsidiary 2. He's more familiar with these details. So the mechanics of it, though, is you can see there that the transactions come through into Sage. It's comprehensive in Sage. And something that I think that is important to understand, though maybe not obvious, there has been no change to the core Sage application. There is zero customization in the Sage core. So the accounts receivable, the inventory control, the order entry, the general ledger, nothing has been changed. We have simply added in the ability to bring transactions in through this process. Okay? So let's just have a little bit more of a look, though, on our accounts receivable customers. There was a question asked about our customers in relation to the ability to manage those credit limits and everything else. So we have a credit warning or whatever when we exceed $200. So this is the credit limit for this customer. So Abraham Lincoln has $200. And you'll see that, no, I don't want to say those changes at this stage. Maya has the same. You can just change that here to 0, and that few dollars that might be left. In fact, let's just look at statistics. Actually, statistics won't really help me. Go to customer inquiry. Let's go back. That's where I need to go, not forward. So you can see here, if I look at the credit status again, we have nothing available here, but we have $4.49 available here. This is something, if you don't want that to loiter around, you simply take away the credit limit and then there's no credit available. Now, what I was indicating before was that we can manage that one by one if you want. You could run through the system here and manage those one at a time by editing those credit limits in the custom maintenance area. So in this field here, you could change the credit that's available under invoicing. No, it's disappeared on me. Either I've gone blind. Oh yeah, here's the 200 here. You could change that here one by one. So May has used it up, gone. Okay. If you don't change that, of course, that customer is going to actually think that they still have that available. So you will have to, in some respect, manage that. Now, we can do that really easily, though, because every part of Sage has extensive import and export features. Now, we could actually build for you a macro, which would do this automatically, and it could be run every day as well. So whenever a customer, one of these, let's call them a child account in a national account, we could say whenever that child account has a balance due, which is not equal to the credit limit, right? So in other words, this guy spent $195. We can say, well, we're going to write off the rest of that and just reduce it all and take it all away entirely. And basically, therefore, say that we could set that back to 0. So we have, as I said, that import and export as well. Now, we can do it as a macro. Here's where you set your macros. And fundamentally from there, we have the ability to manage it as well in an Excel spreadsheet. So if I were to do an export of those ones there, you'll see here they will come out and you can choose these fields. And this is not difficult to do. And then here I could just simply edit this to this. And if I were to do this again, this is one that I has run in advance, just so I can show you this. So I'll do a new one now and you see that these amounts here would change. So I'll just close that spreadsheet. And if I go to my customers again in my Sage system, customers here, and I do a file export, so I'll run the process. So I choose customer. Now, there is an option here to do scripts. Now, we've actually created a script in advance for this, and this script is for the WW scenario. Now, this script is a very simple thing. Believe me, it's not difficult. You just set the criteria and you save the script. When I now export this, it's going to put it onto my desktop as the WW, so it will replace that existing one. Okay, if I choose no, the file will be overwritten. I'm sorry, I'm jumping through screens pretty quickly. I should go a little slower. So that's now exported 5 records. And you'll notice that because we added an additional customer, theoretically, David Kernke should now also appear in that file. So if I go back to Excel and open WW, we now have this list. So we can see here, I've been added to the list, and you would recall that I defaulted to the 7,500, which came from the group. But you can see now these balances are now in here. So this one and this one now equal. So you can simply have a process that would say, insert a cell where this is not 0, set this column to 0, that sort of scenario with a VLOOKUP or something similar, or an index match. But fundamentally, you can manage it here and import that. So if I just change this to 0 and this to 0, now it's something to be important here. Changing some things like balance dues and that sort of stuff will not import. So I cannot change that. But let's just say, well, David should have been 200. That's just an error, right? So if I just make those changes now and save this, and I don't actually have to close, but I will close it just to be tidy. And I go back into my customer, AR customers, and I say import customer, which is basically the reverse of what we did with our export, and it's already found this file. So I can do that sort of scenario. And if I say OK, it will say 3 customers were updated, none inserted, total of 5 were processed. Okay, close. So that's just, remember, I'm just working on the simple exported file. Now, I will be blunt. The criteria I did made the file be a little bit more concise than it would be, because it would in fact give you the ability to export every field. But now you'll see here, we have, let's get our customer inquiry screen. If I work through our customers now, you'll see the credit limit is now available 0. The credit limit for Abraham is now 0. And for David, it's now 200. So you can manage those concepts of credit limits and everything else in a couple of ways. I've shown you there the manual way, or we can do it with a bigger approach with Excel, or we can even build a macro up here, which can just be run daily to do that process. And that's certainly something that I would recommend. It's one of the biggest powers of Sage. It has the ability to make life easy for you as a user, particularly with repetitive tasks. Where there's a process or a procedure that you do regularly to manage your data, it will allow you to do it automatically. And you can literally just record a macro here. And if you record the macro with a little bit of basic VB skills, you can take them forward. Now, we have fairly advanced VB skills because we've written within the SDK here, but these macros are not hard to do, okay? And if you have anyone who has a bit of programming now, you can use them. Obviously, you need to be careful with it. And we're always around to help and to create macros and work macros with you, or to train you in how you might want to do it. But that simple little macro to set those balances is really, really simple. That process there of export and import is also very, very simple. So you're getting an idea there that you wouldn't have any troubles in doing it. So let's just close that one. And if I look in here in our credit status, as we see, David Kernke did nothing, but we are here. We've got no credit limit. There's nothing available. This one does owe us money, though. This one has a balance of 195.51 outstanding. This one has 200 outstanding. So totally for the organisation, we have that 395.51 outstanding. Now, there's a couple of things that go into this. So I don't forget, I was going to write 395.
Hey, David.
Yeah.
Can I ask 2 questions in case we move completely on?
Sure.
I think you had showed me last time. Isn't there somewhere that we can, I think I see it here below, the cutoff date as of when they're able to use that charged limit?
That's not necessarily that scenario. This is a reporting scenario that affects these age things down here. But if you want to have a date that it's not a problem.
You showed us last time, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah, in fact, there's a number of ways you could handle that. But if you want to put that date into the system, perhaps the easiest way is through those optional fields. You would just set a cutoff date here. That's probably the far easiest method, and it's from a visibility perspective really straightforward to see that that's what it is. And we could again use that as part of that automated macro every night to go back and remove credit limit for you automatically without having to think about it. Okay, it's not. The system isn't built to say, oh, you've got a credit balance that goes until a certain period of time. There's no time basis on these actual fields, which are the ones that integrate with Retail Pro. So I'm trying to keep it within what we will work between the two systems, obviously. But if we do maintain a field for that, very simple to have that set to 0 automatically if they haven't used their credit. Okay.
Okay. And is that also the optional fields where we could put if the national account always received a 10% discount?
Well, you would manage that more in the pricing.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue there is you have a couple of ways to handle pricing. We have a bi-directional feed in pricing between Sage and Retail Pro. So you could manage the pricing in here. And just to give you an idea, there are significant pricing options available in Sage. And you can see here we have item pricing. We also have contract pricing. And you actually have the ability to do various options here. Now, for example, there's nothing to stop you with your customer in Sage to set them up so that they enjoy a pricing mechanic. So when I'm looking at my customers, and I close that screen, just let it open again. So we go to WW again. When we're doing invoicing, they will deal on a customer price list, right? Now, I haven't given these ones a price list because I was really working on the idea that the pricing will be managed by Retail Pro. Because remember, at the end of the day, I can do anything I want in Sage. It won't affect Retail Pro unless I instruct and make sure that it's going to do that integration. Now, we can do that. We do synchronize price lists, okay? And I'll just show you that in a moment. But if you set them on a price list of retail, okay, so this customer now, or the group in this case, but you would set this up as the default group, and therefore it would default for each customer you create under this customer or under this national account. And you can put them on what we would call an A, B, C, D, E level. So you give actually, E is where you usually give the best discounts. You say, you're my A-list customer, though they all think it's pretty cool. Okay, so we'll just save that.
Okay, so like A could be 10, B could be 15%, something like that.
You've hit the nail smack on the head, because under item pricing.
Okay. No, that's perfect. That's all. I thought you had showed me, but I couldn't remember, and I wanted Casey to see it. So that's perfect.
Yeah. And you'd have to find the items in here, and I don't know where they would be, but in the retail price list, basically for an item, for any item, just to give you an example, I can say you could do it just for a specific item here, and you can say that their discounts are an A-level customer. Well, in fact, this is sort of the default system, but the A-level customer is set to get no discount. So in other words, they're just a base level customer, but you could set that to be a 10% or whatever, and you can see A, B, C, D, E. Sure. And the base price up here you see comes from here where you're setting a base price. Now this item hasn't been established with a price. You'll also notice here you can do sale pricing. Now, one of the things I will be open with you now, this pricing here can be integrated with Retail Pro, but Retail Pro offers far superior promotional pricing features. So you would do, in my mind, your retail pricing in the main in Retail Pro. So in Retail Pro, you would set that customer group up to be a 10% discount, and it would just happen. Sage goes. Sage just goes a bit further as well. So because the transaction is going to happen at the final instance for the customer directly in the retail system, right. Retail Pro needs to get that pricing. What I was going to also say though is you can actually set in here contract pricing. So you could choose a particular customer or a range of customers. And again, you have the ability here to do, what do you call it, exports and imports. But if we could say set up for Whistle Workwear, and we could set up for a category of items, and we could choose boots. I don't know what we actually have here. There's boots, nice and easy. And I could say that based on the customer type, I could do that sort of scenario. Or I could just do a discount percentage, and I could say that this customer gets a 10% discount. It's the same sort of thing. And this can have a start date and an end date, right? And it will go through. If you check this box, if you're doing a transaction in Sage, it will actually say, well, if the customer, because of a sale offering, was actually able to get a 20% discount, it would give them the 20%, not force the 10%. The way it's set now, if I were to say save, it would force this to be a it would force this to be a 10% discount for the customer. But I checked that, they'd get the 20% discount from the sales on offer. So there's numbers of options.
Okay, perfect.
And
Thank you for showing that. That's
No
good.
problem.
I don't want to take up too much of Susan's time.
No problem. One other thing
Thank you
that is
very much.
worthwhile. Yeah, one of the things worthwhile seeing here is this is where we do the item number syncs, and the item number syncs, which should also be an automated task. And of course, I'm on the wrong machine to do that. Sorry, I need to be on the other machine for that Oracle link. But in the item sync, that's the process that would actually do that synchronization between Sage and Retail Pro, and it's bi-directional. But you would normally choose one as your point of truth. In other words, if you're doing retail pricing, my advice is do it in Retail Pro, and Retail Pro will handle that anyway. If you were doing the sales in Sage, though, just through order entry, for example, for wholesale customers, and you don't need to go through the retail system, then you would set it up here in Sage. Okay, but that's the mechanic.
Okay.
So just to try to
Great.
move things along, then. So this is our customer screen. We've seen that part. That's not a problem, and we're finished with it. And our customer national account showing the same information, so we're seeing the statistics that will be accumulating and working on the systems there. So those new transactions have come through, then these statistics will have gone up and changed. And if I go to my statements now, so if I want to run a statement, and let's just say I'm going to do a statement and I'm going to do a national account statement, and we did a little bit of work here for you, by the way. So I'm going to do this for all customers, which means it doesn't matter what style of customer they are, and we do it for Whistle Workwear. It's a national account statement. The run date's today with the cutoff date of today, and we're going to age by the due date. There are some other features in there that you can do to make things a little bit fancier. If I print this now, and it'll only take a moment, but the design of this report can also be customized to whatever you wish it to be. Now, we took note from the last time we chatted, and we said, okay, well, if we want this to show information, now this is being sent, if you like, to Whistle Workwear as their corporate statement. And we've now identified that WW001 Abraham is here, and on him you owe $195.51, and Maya you owe $200. Okay, so there's $395.51 due. It tells them as well that they've got their credit limit and everything else. And this is something. Now, last time you saw that, we showed you this. You had page 1, page 2, and then the total. So we just brought it back onto a single page, so you get a single statement. Okay, and you can have that to be any way you want. If you wanted to send one, if for example, what was actually happening is here was that Whistle Workwear was saying to Abraham and Maya, well, you can charge it, but you're going to still have to pay for it eventually. You could also print this out without it being a national account statement in such a way that it would produce individual statements to the individual customers if you wanted to. I'm going to say no to this just simply because I could reprint it if I needed to. Okay, well, you could actually reprint it anyway. The idea of this is that if you do your statements, the system keeps a monitoring of all of the statements that have been sent historically, so you can go back and review them if you need to. All right, so that's that mechanic. Now, one thing I did do wrong last time and didn't work, so I'll show you it happening properly here. So in our accounts receivable transactions, if I go in and do a receipt entry, so I'm going to receive money of so Whistle Workwear are going to pay us our $395.51. Okay, so I'm going to do a new batch, WW payment. Whoops, there should be an N in there, and so it's going to be a receipt. The customer is going to be Whistle Workwear, and the idea here is that I can say whatever we received. They've sent us a check. You can do your references, everything else. It's a very busy screen, I understand, but it doesn't need to be. But they're going to be sending me $395.51. Right, so I've got $395.51 to apply. There are some select modes here. So we're currently in select mode, or we could also be in auto apply. So if you're dealing with customers who you know you haven't got any disputes with, you can simply choose auto apply. I'm not going to do that for the moment. I'm just going to say go. So this is now showing me that and you can have the customer name here if you wanted it without any troubles. So WW1 and WW2, they're the two amounts that need to be applied. So I can simply say 195.51 in here and 190 and 200 in the other one. Or as I suggested as well, we could click the auto apply and click go, and it's automatically applied them for me, you see. So if I add that transaction, I've now received the entire payment for all 3 customers. Close that. And in my receipt batch list, if I don't show the posted ones, here's that one that I just processed, and I can choose to post it. It says, it hasn't been set to ready. Are you sure you want to post it? I'm going to say yes. This is the little post flag up here. And this is one of those audit controls you can have that I was mentioning. So if you want to control, if the financial controller wants to control things, you can have that level of control. But this can also be set to post automatically. So I'm just posting it pretty simply. So we've now posted that. It's completed. It's given me all of my audit trail and everything else on that transaction. And if I refresh that, so there's no outstanding unposted receipt batches. Go back into my customers, and we'll see if I look at customer inquiry. Again, we'll go to WW00. So Whistle Workwear, no outstanding balance, full 7,500 is available, but that's set on the total customer. WW1 paid, WW2 paid, and obviously these guys had already paid off anyway, and David didn't do any buying. He still had his $200 credit limit. Okay. So if do you have any other questions quickly? Because that's probably as far as I had planned.
I have a couple of questions, David. Can you show me a receipt that a customer would walk out the door with?
Yeah, probably. Let me just see. It would be a Retail Pro feature. So let's just assume here that let me just grab a number here, make life easy. So if we choose Abe or any customer in reality, and we do a transaction, just put him on it. And if we now tender the transaction off, and it's done on whatever mechanic, we'd probably run into some credit limits because I've killed off all the credit. So we'll just do a cash transaction, and we've got that $782 on it. Now I should be able to take that money first, David. Now I should be able to print update and preview. Let's just choose a layout. So this is something BSD can go through with you in detail, but realistically you can set a plethora of formats of what you might want to see. But let's just say we're dealing here with a 40-column Epson TM88 receipt printer, and you would choose an Epson TM88. And you can now choose to email it if you wanted to email it to the customer. So this is again Retail Pro. There's nothing fancy here. This is straightforward stuff. They get that. But you could have one that goes to them with a receipt 40 column with an image on it or something else. That might work, to be honest. Simon's going to complain and say, David, that won't work. But I'll just do it, see if I can do a preview now. And that's an example of a receipt that would come out. That would print out on your little 1 meter per second tape that comes out of your cash register receipt printer. It shows you the items. You can have anything on here you want from a description perspective. The description here is actually showing description 1, so you're actually getting the, if you like, the item number, generic item number, or alternate lookup, or whatever has been set to go into that field. In our system, description 2 is the one we have, so we should be reporting description 2 here to show that this would be a Cahill boot. And so on.
Right.
But it puts
Great. That shows me the information I was interested in. And secondly, when you're generating an invoice for a national account, is there a way that these receipts will be sent with the invoice electronically?
Well, I mean, most certainly. There's a number of ways you can approach that. I probably wouldn't try to do that within Retail Pro. I would probably leave that in the management of your accounts receivables team, which means it would be a Sage function. So if we consider this now from a transactional perspective and process, the customer, in this case Abraham Lincoln, has come in and he's made his purchase here, and so we've got Abraham Lincoln has been sold to, so we've got that information, and any other information you want to print on here can be done. We know information that is required here to identify the transaction and scan things in through these, so they can bring it back for returns, and you can go through your centrals returns if that's ever required. But the mechanic of that is this is the transaction for the employee when he's at the counter. So the transaction then flows across into the Sage system, and in our Sage system, we have the ability here to do all sorts of wonderful things. Let me just show you the idea of printing a receipt in here. Well, let's call it an invoice or whatever you might want to call it. So if I want to print my invoices, because realistically, whilst it's called a receipt in Sage, because you hand over a receipt to the customer, typically for the tender they give you. In reality, when you're giving them a transaction which is on charge, it is an invoice in reality, and it is an invoice. So if I want to print my invoices, right, I can just reprint my invoices from here, and these can be done in any layer of formatting that you might ever want. And the idea of how this is printed is very, very simple, but I'll just show you. So you have this flag here which says include invoices already printed, right? If that's not selected, right, it would print those that haven't been ever printed before. So let's just go to the end. I know I can't go to the very end because we've got other ones in here just to compromise us. So we've got here, I'm just showing this list of items, which are sales. So you can see here, these are the 3 that I did today, okay, from this one to this one. And you can change, by the way, what you see on these lookup screens, and your search criteria can also, again, be very powerful. It remembers what you've set it for. And through your column settings, you can say what you wish to see in this list, but without getting into the detail of that. So you can see these are the ones that I did today. So if I choose from this one, and then I go to the, let's just make life easier for me, copy that one and paste it into here and do search, and then I'll come down 2 more. So these are the 3 that I did today. Now you will recall I did, I believe, print one already, okay? Now, if I choose print here, a couple of things will happen. Well, you would hope so. It would print the invoices. Now, the real decision for you is on how you want that to happen for that customer. So let me just show you where this is controlled in Sage. So in the Accounts Receivable Customer and WW tab, so let's just look at, that's the corporate group. So in our processing, we are setting up a number of things. We're setting up a contact. So this is a person name. That person has potentially a fax and or an email. And we can also set up an email here. Now, this is what's called the company email. And this, obviously, as you'd expect, is called the contact email. And when we're doing our processing, we choose an option called delivery method. Now, when you choose your delivery method, there are these options that are available. Mail. It will go to the printer, and you will physically stuff it into an envelope and mail it to your customer. If you choose for this customer that you want it to go to the email for the customer, it will go to the email address on the address tab, okay? If you choose email contact, it will go to the email on the contact tab. If you choose multiple contacts, you'll note here, you have the ability to add new contacts. You can have multiple contacts down in here, so you're adding another contact, and that contact has their own email address and everything else, right? So here's the email flag, email field. So basically from here, whatever you choose by customer will happen here. So when you choose the options here, what you set as your requirement or your wish, so if it's all going to go, so whether it's for Whistle Workwear or whether it's for Whistle Abraham Lincoln or Maya, right? And if you choose email customer, and in all of those you have the email customer here, okay, it would do that. Now I haven't got the full email system setting up, but you can get the gist of this, I'm sure. So when I'm now saying here I want to print this, it says what is the delivery method. So the print destination aligns with that field. So what this means is you can deal with different customers with a different result. Okay, so some will get it in out of the printer, others will be emailed to the customer. So if you set them all up like that, they'll all go to the customer one. Now this could mean, in fact, here the contact here could be Maya, and this would be Maya at, right, www.com, and this one here could be admin, or sorry, AP at www.com. My typing isn't all that good. So if you save that down, and in the processing you choose email customer, all of the emails for those people who are in that group will go to them, because when we're choosing here under invoicing, under processing, we're choosing to deliver to the email of the customer. So by simply choosing this and not having those ones already pre-selected, it would generate a report. Now I'm going to change that, because I don't actually want that to happen, because I'm not set up to send an email. If you want, I can show you the email being delivered. I'm just going to put it back to mail, but I'll just choose print here. And my system is saying it also needs some updates. So you'll see it only printed 2, because remember the first one I've already printed it. I printed it before, so it knows it's been printed, so it knows it won't reprint it. So you're not sending multiple invoices, okay? But you see there's the first invoice, which is going in relation to Abraham Lincoln, and I've clicked on Abraham Lincoln. Let me just go back up a level here, if I can work out how to do that. Cancel, I said export it. How do I go up, Reinhardt? Let's just regenerate that.
Click on main report.
Okay, well, I'm a bit late now. I'll do it, and I'll include those that have already been printed, so we should see 6, 7, and 8 this time. You'll see the full 8 of them. So if you ever had to reproduce it, you could. So now, as you see, we have the 6, 7, and 8. So there's our 6, there's our 7. So there's our one for Abraham, and then the Whistle corporate account, which is the larger one at the end of the day. Now, this just like the other parts, can be a simple automated process. And it will go through your email, SMTP email server or your relay server to send these emails out automatically. Now, these invoices are the individual invoices for the customer, not to be confused with the statement, because typically you would also send them a statement if you wanted. So if you're doing it daily, you could send those invoices every day, right? And we have this happening with a customer who does, I don't know, several thousand invoices a day across their stores. And all of those invoices get to their customers individually every day in the morning, basically the day after they are delivered. And then at the end of the month, they get a statement, and the statement can be done just as a statement, or the statement can be done with the invoices regenerated. And the reason you can regenerate them, of course, is we can just simply utilize that flag of printed or not printed. So it will actually do it in that way, and it will send them to them as an email, as attachments in the email if you're doing it electronically. The Sage system handles that within itself. The only stipulation I would say, and this is me being open with you based upon experience, there are a number of options in the way you can set up the emailing components of this. And I just have to find out where the email setup is done. Reinhardt, is that under Common Services?
I was just going to say, I don't know that they would need to see it all set up there, Dave.
Oh.
I'm just guessing though. But I think that, I mean, what they wanted to see those documents from the invoice, from the customer walking in the front door, that invoice you showed, and the invoice that you just showed for, the bigger invoice, the Whistle worker invoice for the corporate account, the national account, and then maybe the statement. I think they just want to see those documents to screen and know that, they can set it up that way.
Okay, well, we've done that.
I'll let the customer. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Is there anything from, and sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but
No,
from the client's perspective, Rebecca, I mean, are you guys seeing what you want here, or is there somewhere you want David to show anything more in depth?
I've seen what I needed to. This is Susan. I've seen what I wanted to see. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I think so too. I think you hit everything really, really well there, David. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's good to see it flow from like kind of beginning to end. So that helps.
Yes.
And
Nice job.
we could go a little further as well if you wanted. We could actually take you through to the bank where that comes through as a reconciling transaction as well. But that's the end of the story, I suppose, because where the cash, so where everything else comes through. But yeah, and then of course it all drops into the general ledger, and in the general ledger you're going to get your financial reporting, where you can get your financial reports straight out of the system here.
Perfect. Do you need to see that, Susan, or do you feel like, are you comfortable that it's got what you need there?
From this point, it's pretty much going to be the same as any other program that I've worked with. I feel certain. So,
agreed.
Yeah, I don't think I'll need to see that, but thank you.
It does have some exceptional power in the general ledger accounts. It really does. But again, it is just a general ledger. Once you've set it up and you're getting your reports out of it, it's just a repository of data which you use for your financial information. But yes, it does have some significant power in there, particularly in the way. I'll just show you a small thing in the general ledger, which is a good selling feature for Retail Pro. We're able to set up these things called segments as well as account structures. So it's not like a lot of systems where your general ledger account structures are locked down. So you can set up the structure in your general ledger to be, for example, a general ledger account structure. In this case, it just has the account. We could also set up a divisional structure, which would be account and division. And you could have a secondary one, which is account and region, as opposed to division, where you're setting up the various options. So you might have, you only care about reporting by Texas, whereas in this one here, you might want to report and change the concept of the word region to store, and you see your account and store, which means when you're running your reports, the segment codes for what you put into the division could be store number 12345. The region could be or store, just read store. So the fundamental requirement here is you can get your financials, particularly your trading part of your trading financial statements, can come out by store and be consolidated across your page, so you see the total leading down into a gross profit contribution to then your overheads and or whatever you want. So if you want an EBIT or anything else from your financial reporting, it's all no problem. And again, I think I mentioned before on that, we'll have no trouble helping you with that, because two of us who are here on this call, myself and Reinhard, are both chartered accountants. So equivalent in America would be like a CPA, although we think they're beneath us, but that's an argument.
Excellent.
So yeah, not a problem. And that it is very, very powerful. That's an important thing to understand. So yeah, it'll do what you want, and it will do it with spades. I'm not even going to talk about the intelligence reporting, all right?
I think that's wonderful, David. Thank you so much. And I was going to say, I've put that report in front of David. That is the grid report. And although our custom programmer has looked at it, evaluated it, and given me a price there, David's specialty is the reporting and customizing reporting as well. And of course, they're immersed in Retail Pro as we are. So we're going to get his take on that as well for the grid reporting, the first report that you gave us and the second. So I just wanted to let you know he's going to also spec that out for me, and we'll just give you both options. So, but we're confident in both reports. I did speak with Jeff in our office, and he's confident that we can get at that second report you sent me as well. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just on reporting, as I mentioned to Karen, we've done a lot of reporting over the years, and you can see here that one of the standard reporting tools in Sage is Crystal Reports. So that national account we've modified from the AR statement 11. We changed this one here to consolidate those in together. So these look complicated. For Reinhard, he can understand that and a quick glimpse, but this is just the engine that you use to create the report. So realistically, there's nothing in reporting you can't achieve, and that's just using the standard reporting tool, if you like, that is built for Sage. And that is the core reports out of Sage are built on that. We do have this intelligence reporting as well, which is a tool which allows us to take effectively, it puts Excel on steroids, allows you to report that. It is actually OEM'd AccLink, which is an in-memory business intelligence program, which allows us to create all sorts of reports in there. And then on top of that, if you're part of the Microsoft 365 world, you could utilize Power BI. There is really no limitations on your reporting. And the reporting in Sage only requires typically the standard reports that you require to be presented for you and then done. And if you use this reporting manager, you can have these reports generated automatically every day and sent via email to the people that need them. And if they're done through here in Excel, they will include potentially pivot tables and other bits and pieces. So there's no limit to the scale from a reporting perspective within the Sage suite. Also understand it. Sorry.
It's what we always say is that every field is reportable and sortable.
Yes, yes.
And if there's something that you want to mock up, like the two that you've done, then we'll send them and involve David, and we'll get that going. That's great, David. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great. Thank you. Was there anything else on the floor? Was there anything else from your perspective from the Bootjack group that are you guys comfortable?
No, I think we're good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, well, I'll stop this recording now because it did record.